After taunts and unfair calls, Gauff fights back with victory and tears at Wuhan Open. It was supposed to be just another day on the court. Bright lights, roaring fans, and the hum of competition. But for Coco Gauff, the 2025 Wuhan Open wasn't starting like any other match. From the moment she stepped onto the hard court, something felt off. Her opponent, a seasoned Eastern European veteran known for her psychological warfare, glared across the net with a smirk that dripped with arrogance. The crowd buzzed with curiosity. Everyone knew this would be a test, not a skill but a spirit. And then came the first bad call. A perfect forehand down the line. Clean, beautiful, but the umpire's voice cut to the air. Out! Coco froze mid-stride, eyes wide, disbelief painting her face. The replay flashed on the screen. The ball had clearly clipped the line. A ripple of boos rolled through the stands. She raised her hand, asking for review, but the umpire, the same one who clashed with her 2 years prior, shook his head coldly. No challenge available. The match continued, but so did the whispers. The taunts came next. Between points, her opponent muttered things just loud enough for Coco to hear. American princess, overrated, lucky kid. Each word landed like a serve to the chest. By the fifth game, Gauff's patience was unraveling. Her heart pounded. She wanted to scream, but she'd learned the price of losing control. She inhaled sharply, recalling her father's voice, calm, steady, the voice that had guided her since she was 9. When the world turns against you, don't fight the noise. Fight the point. So she did, battle under bright lights. The Wuhan arena shimmered like a glass dome under the night sky. Thousands of eyes followed her every move. Cameras zoomed in on her face, catching the mixture of fury and grace that defined Coco Gauff. Every serve became an act of defiance. Every rally, a declaration of will. But the calls continued to sting. Another forehand ruled out. Another dubious point awarded against her. Even the commentators couldn't stay neutral. This is getting hard to watch, one said, voice heavy with disbelief. These calls are inconsistent, to say the least. Coco's chest rose and fell with exhaustion. Sweat glistened on her temples. But what hurt more wasn't physical, it was injustice. At 4-5 in the first set, her opponent shouted toward the umpire, gesturing wildly after losing a long rally. The umpire sided with her without hesitation, awarding a replay of the point. Coco's racket trembled in her hand. The boos grew louder. She turned toward the umpire. How many times do I have to prove myself before you treat me fair? Silence. The umpire avoided her gaze. The crowd cheered her bravery. But Coco felt a familiar ache, that deep, silent fatigue of always having to be composed, always being the example. She walked back to the baseline, staring at her racket strings like they held answers. Her opponent smirked again, twirling her racket lazily. Go back to social media. Princess, the opponent said under her breath. That was it. The switch flipped. The turning point. The second set began with a different energy. Coco's eyes burned with focus, not rage, but something purer. A storm, silent and electric, gathering within her. She wasn't playing against anyone anymore. She was playing for something. For every unfair whistle she'd heard in her young career. For every woman of color told she didn't belong. For every little girl watching from home, seeing herself in her. The first serve of the set was a bullet, 121 miles per hour. Ace! The crowd erupted. She clenched her fist, whispering, "Let's go." Then came another ace. Then another. The momentum shifted like a wave, crashing through the arena. Her opponent's smirk faltered. When a questionable call came again at 3-1, Coco didn't even flinch. She simply smiled, walked to the baseline, and hit a forehand so clean that even the umpire hesitated before calling. Winner! The crowd roared. Coco, Coco, Coco. The chant became a heartbeat, steady, powerful, unstoppable. The breaking point. At 5-2, the tension exploded. Another bad call, this one so blatantly wrong it drew gasps from both benches. The ball had landed a full inch inside the line, yet again ruled out. Coco dropped her racket. Her eyes glistened. For a second, it looked like she might walk off. Her coach stood up from the box, shaking his head in disbelief. "Stay strong," he mouthed. She looked up at him, then at the crowd, who were now chanting her name in unison. Something inside her shifted again, pain into power, frustration into fire. She walked to the baseline, raised her hand, and said softly into Mike, "I don't need fair calls to win. Watch me." The arena erupted, and they did. She served with fury, her movement graceful and sharp. The sound of the ball striking her strings was pure thunder. Each rally became poetry, aggressive, emotional, unstoppable. Her opponent cracked under pressure. Double fault, 6-2. The third set began with the energy of a storm breaking open. Every tear earned. By the final set, both players were drenched in sweat. Every muscle in Coco's body screamed, but her spirit sang louder. The crowd was electric now. Every point she won met with waves of cheers. Every injustice met with defiance. At match point, Coco tossed the ball high. The world seemed to pause. She swung. A perfect ace down the tee line. Game. Set. Match. Gauff. She dropped to her knees. Hands over her face. Tears streaming down. Not tears of pain. Not even joy. But of release. The echo beyond Wuhan. Weeks later, the story was still everywhere. Documentaries, features, interviews. But Coco refused to dwell on it. She returned to training, humble as ever. But something had changed. Crowds looked at her differently now, not just as a rising star, but as a symbol. During one match in Paris, a young girl held a sign that read, "Coco, you taught me to fight with grace." After her warm-up, Coco walked over, signed the poster, and said softly, "Never let anyone define your worth." That clip went viral too. But for Coco, it wasn't about fame. It was about purpose. Legacy of fire. Months later, as she prepared for another Grand Slam, a journalist asked her, "Coco, when you look back at Wuhan, what do you remember most? The taunts, the unfairness, or the victory?" She smiled thoughtfully. "None of them," she said. "What I remember most is the moment I realized I didn't need fairness to prove who I was. The court can take away points, but it can't take away pride." The room went silent. She continued, "That night, I stopped playing for approval. I started playing for truth." And with that, Coco Gauff, the girl once taunted, once doubted, became more than an athlete. She became a movement, the sound of justice. Years later, at a charity event, Coco was asked to share advice for young athletes. She looked at the crowd, her eyes soft but firm. "Don't wait for the world to be fair," she said. "Be stronger than unfairness. Be louder than hate. And remember, sometimes your tears aren't weakness. They're just truth finding its way out." Applause filled the room. Cameras flashed. And somewhere in the audience, a little girl clutched a tennis ball and whispered, "One day I'll fight like Coco." Because legends aren't born in victories. They're born in the moments the world tried to break them. And they smiled, wiped their tears, and said, "Not today. Thank you for watching. Please don't forget to hit the subscribe button, like, and share. Till next time.